Hey there, and welcome to Mompreneurs Making Moves. If you've ever tried to answer emails with a toddler pulling at your sleeve, or you've wondered how to grow your business while chasing after your dreams and probably your kids, you're in the right place. Every week, we'll get real about wins, messes, and all the magical moments in between, sharing practical tips, honest stories, and the laughs that keep us going. So let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of Mompreneurs Making Moves. I'm your host, Amariah Murdock, owner and founder of Infinite Exec, and you're in the right place if you're an aspiring or thriving mompreneur who's ready for real talk and all things babies, business, and boundaries. Make sure you're following us at Mompreneurs Making Moves on Instagram and Facebook, and you can watch the full interview on our YouTube channel at Mompreneurs Making Moves Official. And today we have the lovely Britt Stewart, visionary CEO and founder of Free Range Families and Raise Them Up Substack. And you also need to listen to her Free Range Families podcast as well. And our episode today is Education Without Walls and just breaking cycles. So Britt is a homeschooling mom to 3. She's on a mission to help families ditch the system and rediscover God's original design for education. Britt, how are you today?
I'm good. Little sleepy, but that's part of it, you know? I'm good, and I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, no, we love to have you on, and I can second that. I'm definitely sleepy as well. Being a mompreneur is not for the faint of heart.
No.
That is for sure. But it's so worth it, right?
Yep, because you have freedom.
Getting to create freedom for your family. Yeah, there it is.
Yep.
So talk to us about unlearning the system, because you were an educator. You were
Yep.
teaching in public school. You grew up in public school. And then you unlearn what the system taught you. What does that mean to you?
Yes. So, you know what? Looking back, I think I probably want to kick off that question with an experience that I had that kind of set the trajectory of why I pulled it. It was what I saw in the system, but also within my own family. So I was actually teaching first grade at the time, and I had a little kid in my class that was obviously not doing well. He was developmentally, maturely behind, and crying every day when he came to school. I'm not even joking. It was just like, as a teacher, it broke my heart because I knew that things were so rigorous in the school system and there was so much testing, and this little kid was not doing well. Well, his parents approached me and we agreed for retention. And he was almost relieved. Like, the relief in this little boy was just astounding. Push it forward, all the paperwork's been signed, plans have been set in motion. He's excited about not being struggling so much because he needs so much extra help. And I think in first grade, he should have been, one of the, they base it off birthdays. So he was like a younger kid going into it, and he should have been an older kid, just not started quite. But it's a system, they base it off birthdays and they push, and to be honest with you, no child left behind, and they just kind of go through it, and you are left behind when they move you up and you're not ready, especially with standard education. And we got to the end of the year, and I was called into the principal's office, and they basically told me that they're not retaining him. And in a way, so many words, that his spot had been sold. Okay, meaning that I was like, this is such a business, and I don't think I can do this anymore. Like, are we really looking at what's good for the kid, the child, and his development and his success in school? Everything that we go to school to become a teacher, is this really benefiting the child and the family? Or are we just so focused on that $7,000-$8,000 per head, making it in so that our test scores show? And, it just is, it's so backwards. So that was one of the things that I saw as a teacher inside, that I was like, this is not what I signed up for. And then the biggest issue was that my own kids were struggling. So we have, and I'm comfortable talking about this. I think some people aren't, but Tourette syndrome runs in our family. It's not the cursing type. It's just more of like our brains are on overdrive, and sometimes anxiety gravitates towards tics, that kind of thing. But my oldest was really struggling with it when we started school. I mean, he had the IEP, he had headphones, he had chewy necklaces, like the prompts on his desk, and he's extremely gifted. He'll be graduating high school at 15. Like, he's so far in this different pathway. But in the system, it was like exponentially making it worse. Kids were making fun of his headphones. He was having to do double the work because he was in the gifted class. So like all of his second grade work plus the third grade work, second grade assessments plus the third grade assessments. And I finally came to the principal and was like, hey, listen, can we just move him up? I believe that it will help him, you know, with his tics. He doesn't relate to his peers. He's taller than my husband. He's 6'3" and he's 14. Like, the kid's always been just a giant person in life and in everything, right? He doesn't fit this. And the answer was no, we don't do that anymore. Like, it's very rare that we do that. And maybe it was just the district I'm in. Because when I went to school, I'm pretty sure when you went to school, people moved up sometimes. Like, it wasn't that. Yeah. And so I was taken back by her answer. Like, no, we just don't do that anymore. And she felt like having more of this work would be a better thing. And I was like, you know what? I'd rather him be pushed and struggle a little bit. But again, why? The biggest question is, why would they not want to move him up? Because he's got stellar grades, stellar test scores. And if you're looking at that, they need that stuff. If he moves up, yeah, it might not be as good. He'd be challenged, but it might not be perfection. Yeah. To the standards. Yeah. And so they didn't. And I remember vividly one day going through the little drop-off thing where they are like, hey, don't walk your kids to school anymore. They need independence, which is another thing, taking the child away from the family unit. That separation, cutting ties earlier, is just an answer for more control tactics. But he would try to convince me he was sick every day. And I said, this is just so unhealthy. Why is he struggling so much in this system? Because I was conditioned. I went to public school. Yeah. My husband's public schooled, to thinking that this was how it was supposed to be. What I'd like to say is that schools have changed a lot. I mean, really a lot. And I come from a family of teachers, and when they were teaching, they can even say, this is not how it was. There wasn't that much of a push for cutting ties as there is today. And the system was just different. You know, everything wasn't flip-flopped. So that was really the kicker, was that day. And then his behavior specialist came to me and was like, I think you guys should explore homeschooling. So, and I was like, what? No, you're crazy. Like, what? No, homeschoolers are weird, and my children are not weird. I'm not, like, that whole thing. I will not do that. This has got to be an answer to this situation. And so we left, and we went and we found this like Montessori charter school. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like, less instruction inside. My kids have freedom to move. It was not. It was like so against so many values that we have. You know, we're very God-centered in faith, and it was very secular. And it was super hard for us to undo everything they were learning there every day. And my daughter, I have 3 kids, and my middle kiddo is a girl. So my daughter was in kindergarten at the time, and she was crying because she could not pass these sight word tests. So I was like, well, why are we testing these kindergartners anyways? Isn't this like bogus? This is ludicrous. Like, they are 5 and 6 years old. And this is just when the transition in our district was like, no more half-day kindergarten. It's full-day kindergarten. And I was one out of the entire class that refused it. I said, I will sign whatever affidavit you give me, but I'm taking my baby girl home, and she's taking a nap because she's 5. Like, this is not, we're still taking naps at this time. And I know some kids don't and they wean, but she was a nap taker, and it wasn't healthy. Well, they said, I'm sorry, you know, if you're going to do this, you got to be an all-day kinder. And by the end of the day, I literally was taking home an absolutely exhausted child on the verge of tears that struggled all day long in school. And she is so creative and so smart. I cannot lift her up enough. The girl is just so herself, but the testing was overwhelming, and she started developing these weird OCD anxiety things, and I was like, and we're out. I don't think I can do this. This is not what I signed up for. So I think my whole family at one point thought I was crazy, including my husband, and I was like, you know what, we're going to homeschool, even if it's for a year. We have to figure this out, or I don't know. figure out how to afford a really expensive private school that we believe in. I'm not sure what we're going to do, but we're homeschooling. And then we never went back. So it's as simple as that. Like
Yeah.
I just
Love
went
it.
dove in, then you have the homeschool group and now the micro school, and you know, they're exactly, they're flourishing. So, and then my baby's never been in public
Yeah.
school. And I can
Oh,
give you this much, you can tell, because he does not care what anybody thinks. That child is 100% himself. So,
yes. Love that.
yep,
I love that.
yep.
Love that. Love. And so we were talking about leaving the school system, and now your kids are excelling,
Yes.
and you switched gears and, unlearned more or less what the system has taught you. I have a question for the mama who's thinking about homeschooling, but she doesn't feel confident that she's a good teacher. She's never been a teacher, but
Yeah.
she's still thinking about it. And she's like, well, I can't send them,
No.
I can't send them into the public school, but I don't know if I can do it. What would you say to that
Okay, so
mom?
my answer would be twofold. I think on the forefront that God gave us all the tools that we need to teach our own kids. So we are fully equipped. Like nobody is going to know your children better than you. I picked up certain signals from my son and my daughter that this wasn't working. But you have to be able to take that leap and really, it's a leap of faith. You know, that's the hardest part about actually transitioning to homeschooling, is just making that move. The rest of it will fall into place, because the thing is you start actually learning your kids again. I mean, think about it. When you put them in the system, you're actually letting somebody else raise your children for the duration of the day, and then you're trying to undo everything when they come back. So I would tell that mom that A, that's not something you want to do. B, it will be so much simpler than you could possibly imagine, because there's so much wasted time in the school system, from lining up to, going to the bathroom, all of that stuff, that when you're at home, instruction time is really only a couple hours. The rest of it is learning life together and learning each other, and the bond that, I mean, if you want nothing else but just a really secure bond with your kids, it's something that we're lacking. And it's purposeful. I mean, to try to take the child away from the family unit and dissolve the family unit is a great tool for control. And so, when you reset that and realize that really all that matters is this family unit, everything else falls into place afterwards. That would be my first thing, is that you are the best educator for your kiddo. There are so many tools out there you can get overwhelmed. Curriculum, resources, mentoring. But if you just live life with them and then make everything a learning opportunity, the kids will learn more than they ever did in the school system. And so that would be number one. Number two is that if you absolutely can't do it, there are families, and obviously I run a micro school now, that either both parents work, because that's the world we live in. I mean, not to sugarcoat or, hide anything, that is the world we live in. Moms sometimes have to work, dads have to work, and then there is no time, unless you can drastically take a life-changing, shift and have mom stay home or dad stay home. They have to go to work. So micro schools would probably be, I think they're the forefront. Personally, I think that, the key though is to make sure, if you're going to open a micro school or you're going to enroll your child in a micro school, that it doesn't turn into an institution. So you really want the class sizes to stay 10 to 15 kids. If you go past 10, I would hope you would look for one that has 2 teachers, that kind of thing. Just because homeschooling is such an individualized approach to education, and the old one-room schoolhouse wasn't crowded. You had one teacher
Yeah.
and kids of all different ages. So there's benefits to both of them, but that would be my next piece of advice. If you are thinking about leaving the system and it's just not working anymore, you want to do it on your own, homeschooling is totally doable. And you could get overwhelmed with the amount of resources out there, but every state has their own homeschooling advocacy groups, and so you can look to them for resources. HSLDA is wonderful. Everybody should be a member, especially now with tides turning and how popular homeschooling's getting. You need to be a member of HSLDA, because I think there's regulations coming every which way into states. Education is at a huge turning point right now. And then second would be to look for a micro school. Word of mouth, if you know of one that exists, try to figure out if you're a teacher, you might want to open your own because, you have an income. It makes teaching your own kids that much better. I'm enjoying every bit of it. It's been hard work over the summer, but even my youngest was like, Mommy, this is so much fun. And it's not that the days are a little bit longer. We teach from 9 to 2, but I only teach 4 days a week because they don't need any. And I have kids from 8 to 15 in my class. So it's been super fun. So those would be my 2 pieces of advice.
That's
Yeah. And you know what?
and
If you think
that's
about,
perfect segue.
yeah, I just want to touch on, if you've ever read Israel Rain's book, I think if parents could, educating, does God have an opinion? That's the name of it. Education, does God have an opinion? I think it's a book every parent should read because it really puts in perspective the spheres of control that we are supposed to have control over our kids' education. Like, there's nothing else. This whole idea that we send our kids off to the government schools was purposefully constructed. And so really, we were supposed to be the educators of our kiddos and, keep our spheres relatively small so that we can build communities like that. So that's just a side note.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. And perfect segue into what is a micro school and how is your micro school going?
So it's been fun. I'm not going to say everything was perfect because I'm not that kind of person. I just, the realities of it are you are putting, when you homeschool your own kids, you know your own kids and you know their boundaries and that kind of thing. They're your siblings, you know how to monitor behavior, but when you open it up to other children, you definitely dive into the realm of different backgrounds, specifically because I have a group that probably I would say half of them to 3/4 have been homeschooled. The other quarter, or maybe third of them, has not been. So they came from the public school system. And this is where I won't sugarcoat things. There's a drastic difference. Depending on how long the child was in the public school system, most of the time when you leave, you give your children, 2 months, 3 months to what we call decompression. And I'm sure you've heard about this. Like, that's the first step. When you withdraw your child, don't do anything for 2 to 3 months. You just sleep in. You watch movies, you watch, documentaries, you read, you relearn each other, and you let the children decompress from the super structured environment that they were in. But the kids here some of the kids that came from public school didn't have that opportunity. So they went from one totally different environment to my environment. And I don't just run a normal, I would say, like, brick and mortar micro school. We live on a homestead. So, and I'm big into art and projects. And so it's hands-on. Sorry, my dog really wants in the camera. You got to get down. So, it's a totally vast, different way. I like freedom-based education. I like giving the kids the tools they need so that they can go do their work in different stations. But what I found was that some kids are not ready for that leap yet. They're not ready for the, hey, you've been set free, here's your work, let's do it here. They actually need a slower, and so this was on me, they need a slower transition into that kind of environment. So I kind of had to pull the reins back in on maybe week 2 and be like, hey, lunch, you can't eat because we have 5 acres. You can't eat in the orchard and the, tables underneath the tree. You guys are going to eat right here because it was just too much freedom. And I think it made those kids from the public school system uncomfortable. I mean, to be honest. And then we have behavior issues. So that's all the ugly kind of, hard part of it that I didn't foresee. But the beauty of it is that when you take those baby steps with these kids, they actually see that, hey, just the whole, with privilege comes responsibility. I'm giving you so much privilege and these are your responsibility. And eventually they will get to where the homeschoolers are that have been homeschooled because they're very independent. So, think about it. When you're in the public school system, you're told when you take your test, what, you're doing now, when you have to stop. You can't hardly ever finish a task because it's on a timed kind of thing. It's so regimented that when you break free from that system, it's uncomfortable for some of those kids to be like, wait, Miss Brittany, you're telling me that I can take a clipboard and my work to the orchard right now? Yeah, because if you learn better outside, I want you to go outside, but the permission to have that freedom, I think, was scary for some of them, in a good way. And so we are 4 weeks in. This will be we just had our 4th week, and the kids did great, and we've learned everything. I mean, so much. Parents have been like, whoa, how did these kids learn this much in this short amount of time? Because there's not wasted time. You come in I do like a bell work activity, and we always do handwriting, but then we transition into couch lessons. So I don't know if you're familiar with couch lessons, but that's how they used to teach back in the day. So my big lessons like science and history, I teach all together. And then I differentiate the learning for them. Their core math and language, they do that on their own. And then I actually hired a friend of mine. So this was a curveball. I know I wanted her to be there, but she had other obligations. And then those obligations fell through. It was kind of like how everything works out for a reason, and God, puts things in plan and motion. So she's here twice a week. And she's Hispanic, so she teaches Spanish. So now these kids it's amazing. So she's teaching Spanish while I take, we'll do in different cohorts. She'll take the olders for Spanish, and I'll teach the youngers history, and then we swap. And it's been a beautiful blessing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing that you said was interesting is that permission to be free, when you're learning. And then I think you're also a huge promoter of like play and learning, right?
Yes.
Talk briefly about that. What does that mean? Why is play important?
So this is funny that I went to bed, I think it was on week 3, and I could not get this little girl's laugh out of my head. And I told her mom, she's got this like contagious laugh. It's beautiful, but the reason she was laughing is because I taught them paper mache. We did a 3-dimensional globe activity, right? We went very big in geography, and then we're going to scale it down. But I like to integrate art in almost everything I do because I believe in play and project-based learning. But she was covered in glue, like head to toe. She's this little 8-year-old, and my son loves that kind of stuff. But it was because I gave her permission to just get messy. Like within the boundaries of this, like she had glue everywhere, and she was laughing and just like, this is the most amazing day ever. And I just adored every moment of it, because so many times kids are in that same regimented routine. They're not given the freedom to be like, this is okay to get messy. You can get dirt everywhere. It washes off. Glue washes off. I know some kids don't like the sensory of it, and that's a different thing. But I think what's happened is we've taken that out. So now kids don't know. They're so uncomfortable with new things. And that's where play comes in. You can't grow as a person, even as an adult. If you think of something that you haven't done that scares you, like skydiving. Okay, hands down, like, maybe when I was 21, I would have gone skydiving, but now not so much. Okay. That's a big one. But if you think about the steps it takes to get you the courage to go skydiving, you will grow as a person. Okay. You will have an experience that will last a lifetime. And you're taking a risk. So there is a certain amount of risk. And I do think that we're lacking that, not even just, within the kids, but if we're going to make a generation of kids that are entrepreneurs, think about this. They have to be willing to take risks. If they're so in this controlled environment all the time, then when failure sets in, they won't know how to be resilient. I mean, entrepreneurship is risk. We've tried to record this several times because the internet's not, but we're not giving up, right? And so, but this starts at a young age. I want my kids to know that you are going to fail. There's zero doubt about that. Failure just accompanies taking risks. It's like making mistakes, that whole saying, we learn from our mistakes. But if we don't give children the opportunity to climb the rocks that are really tall, cut the pear with the knife, even if you're afraid they're going to cut themselves, you're there monitoring them, they're not going to learn those skills. And then we have this whole generation of kids that are solely dependent on a system. So that's the bigger picture. I have been around friends and families that are, I would say, hovering parents are good. I'm a hovering parent, I want to know what's going on with my kids, but to the point where you are holding your kids back from experiences, if they want to get dirty and jump in the puddles and mud, is it really that big of a deal because it can wash off? I think that's a mentality. Or do you just not want to deal with it? Because parents are stressed. They are stressed out. Yeah. And so I think sometimes it's easier just to have a super controlled environment than to actually let your kids be free and wild and, that kind of thing. So I definitely, I definitely think that may have played into the transition here too, from the different backgrounds. You have to there's a time to sit quietly and listen, and there's a time to take risks and have fun, because you're not going to learn otherwise. So, yeah, and I believe in play. Yeah, got to get those kids outside. Yep.
Yeah, no, I love this because, at first we were focusing on education without walls, but now it's just breaking free from the system and starting new cycles,
Yep. Yes,
because
100%.
The parents that are stressed are the same parents that went through the same system,
Yep.
right? And then the people like us who were kind of rebels and were like, oh, well, I was going to be a teacher, but now I kind of found freedom a different way, and I could still have my love of education and still connect with kids and help my family get to different goals faster, even, because going back to this idea that time is money, one of the worst pieces of advice. If time is money, then you only have so much money because you only have so much time.
Yep.
It just puts you in this mindset of very limited.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't understand that.
No.
And when no offense if you're doing a 9 to 5, right? We do need people to still do 9 to 5s. But at the same time, the entrepreneurs and the people who are creating other things that the world needs also, they have to be able to have that courage, confidence, and like you're saying, the grit to be able to be resilient and take the risks.
Yes.
All of those skills that you're talking about are definitely not what you learn within the walls of a school system. Most of the time, it's something you learn being outside, and you learn more that way and creating more space for creativity. It's funny because when they're in school and they're in that regimen, we're telling them to be creative.
I know.
And then we're totally stopping. And it's just how is this
so
even a thing?
It's the same with diversity and equity. All of those things that they give you, the jargon, it's totally flip-flopped. We say we're an inclusive school, but yet when you have somebody with differences, they're set apart from everybody, and it's very evident that they're not included in the system. So, even with me, I have this varied class, and I want to make sure that the kids are given all the opportunities to do the best they can, but I meet them where they are, because eventually they will even out. But if it's just the standards. If we standardize everything, you standardize life, you standardize education, then nobody can really find their place. To kind of circle back on what you said there, though, we do need 9 to 5s. My husband and I run a construction business, okay, and he works way more than 9 to 5, right? But I think allowing kids the freedom to be like, you know what, I don't like that. How will they ever know it? I don't like that kind of play, or I need something more structured. It actually filters them better into where they're going to be more successful in life. Are they going to be better in an industry that is construction based? Do they need something that is more an accountant? We still need accountants. So if they don't like the paper mache with the glue all over them, then, maybe they're better suited for this, but you won't know that until you give them the opportunity. If everything is just so set and black and white, then, they won't have that idea ever. The scope is not there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. And when you're talking about education within walls too, the most they're going to see is in a textbook, maybe a video.
Yep.
But if you're homeschooling, you can take them to the aquarium to learn about the animals or the zoo, and you
Yes.
can actually do a day in the field or do a day in the office, and just really hands on. And they're going to remember more of that
Yes.
than they are regurgitating something that they read or saw in a textbook.
Yes.
But I want to talk about the flourishing homeschool co-op
Yeah.
because there's two things I'd like for you to hit. One is, how did you get it to be flourishing? Because there's a lot of, grassroots movements that kind of go and then they die. And then the second thing is every co-op the same?
No, not at all. Not even close. I actually have an article. I could probably give it to you. It's called Homeschool Co-ops and Itchy Socks, because of my experience, and it's a play on, that sock doesn't fit, and so why try to force it? Um,
Yeah.
I started Homeschool Underground because we had left the system and I was looking for my community. I was looking for the same kind of people because it was important to me that my children, I'm teaching them all the time, but that they maybe connect with somebody else. They see that the world around them still there. Um, and as they get older, I really wanted them to be able to discern, and you can't discern unless you are somewhat exposed to things. I mean, that's the truth of it. We want to make sure they're exposed
Yeah.
at the right developmental levels. And so it was important. Long story short, we joined a co-op and it just wasn't the right fit. It was an itchy sock. And unfortunately, or fortunately enough, after my experience in public school trying to force the sock to fit, I was like, yep, nope, this isn't working. Why waste the time? It's only going to hurt my kids if they stay in for 4 years and I pull them out, and they have made friends, and I am just so unhappy with the co-op. So we pulled back, and I was at the park one day and I said, why don't I just make my own? And his parents looked at me and they were like, it's like PTA on overdrive. And I was like, I don't want to be the principal of anything, but what if we could make a community where all the parents, the word community really means that we all work together. There might be a voice of things, but we all work together and we all contribute to the co-op, a cooperative environment. And I know there's got to be parents like me out there. I'm unapologetically unvaccinated. Like, I don't do vax. So I really wanted, and it's something, I'm passionate about. I also was totally blown away with the mask thing, and my kids, I was like, yeah, you can wear your mask, but you can wear it on your head, because it was just something that we felt was ridiculous. Okay. And so I know that that's going to be crazy, and, viewers, they all have their own opinion, but at the root of it, I wanted people that we didn't have to have that dialogue, similar people with the similar values. And so I just put it out there. I said, you know what? Let's make a co-op. These are the things that I want to see. I want a tight mission statement where God is the center, and faith, family, freedom, fellowship. That was kind of like the 4 core values. I want to raise arrows. I want my kids to be able to discern. I want them to be surrounded with people, because think about it. When you are an entrepreneur, you want to surround yourself with other entrepreneurs. I want my kids to be surrounded by other kids that, whose families have the same ideals. And so we have a crisp mission statement, but I wanted to make sure that they also had things like maybe a dance, a year. Graduation promotion is different because we promote, and grade levels are very blurred in homeschool, but we still do have a ceremony at the end of the year where we recognize the children's achievements. And then we graduate, middle school and high schoolers. And it's wonderful. They can show all of the things that they learned too. It's kind of like a display thing. And I wanted them to be able to find maybe a club that they liked. So this is where the parents come in. Everybody has unique gifts. So my outreach to them was a calling to say, hey, you're really good at making sourdough. You're an amazing cake decorator. You teach archery. You teach self-defense. Why don't we create something where you guys are actually teaching classes? And they're mini classes, but we bring it together in these things called units. So we do thematic units, and we are just at the end of our first one, which was an entrepreneur unit. We partner with Futurepreneurs, which is an incredible curriculum. If you guys haven't looked at it, Futurepreneurs is amazing. And then we partnered with a local market. So we actually, if you go to my Instagram, I have a video posted, and the kids did this amazing, like, it was their marketing day. They did an amazing social media marketing for their September 20th market day. But we started at the very beginning of like logos and, you know, the psychology behind typography, all the way into, it was super cool, all the way into market day, which is, you know, September 20th. So that's how we do our unit, and every parent has their own gifts that they bring to the table, you know. And so then in October we're doing more Constitution. Into the holidays we do like Christmas around the world, but it's been a gift. So I think if you are going to, and touching back to what you said about homeschooling co-ops, the average lifespan is like 2 to 3 years, I think, because what happens is you do have to deal with families and parents to a certain extent, and sometimes they're just like, why am I working this hard for free? But if you're of the mindset that it's the longevity, what your kids are getting, you know, my kids have met their best friends in my co-op. I've met my best friends here. So if that is your goal and it's more idealistic in nature, then this would probably be a good venture for you to run. But it is hard work. Ours has probably withstood the test of time because of that, because I'm not in it for the money. I think that's the biggest root, is you really have to be like, there is no money in a homeschool co-op. I mean, honestly, you could charge a ton of money and have it rolled over, but if you're trying to keep it membership funds low, you're all working together, then there really is no money in it. And so it's just for the benefit of the families and the community to kind of find your village. And so I think that's why we've been so successful. And I don't bend on my convictions. So the mission statement is always solid. I bend to what parents are saying, hey, this worked, this doesn't work, but never on your convictions. Yeah. So that's it.
Yeah,
you
that's
should
great.
start your own one in Utah.
I know. I mean, honestly, I think my husband and I are going to start a micro school for sure, because it's been a dream for a while, but we just are trying to get the resources together. And could you speak to that actually while we're here? Like,
it's
what
funny.
can we do if it's like, hey, we've got families who are even somewhat willing to invest a little bit, but we don't have a place, and we would need that. And then how do you also answer families who are like, I want my kid to be there, but you've got to have more kids, because if it's just them and, you know, 2 other 6-year-olds, they're not going to have a social life. Those are 2 things that we've been coming up against.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. So I would say it's funny you talk about this, because my boss, I work, you know, part-time for Public School Exit, and she just hit me up. I kind of had to take a leave of absence over the summer because I was building a schoolhouse, right? It was just way too much to do. But she checked in with me, and we were breaking down the cost. So first of all, financially, the way we did it is we have a homestead. So we actually built a metal building. And I think altogether with the cement, the metal building, I mean, this is legit the cost. We put aside $30,000, okay? This is everything from electric to air conditioning, you know, epoxy floors, drywall. Like, it's a big undertaking, but it's not $100,000. You don't need, you know, a giant space. Ours is like 360 square feet. Okay, because most of my schooling, like if I have a couch lesson, I might do it, and I need television. I might do instruction inside. Yeah. But a lot of it's outside. When the weather is ideal here, we can work for the most part outside, which is what I like. But for those families that don't have land, I would say if you have a space in your house, you know, you kind of want to replicate your homeschooling environment. So if you have a living room or a kitchen, you can teach those kids and then take them outside for recess and use your home really as the school. And I think it's cozy. I think it works. And then you don't have the overhead that we had. If you do end up building a place for instruction on your property outside your home, I would say that this is one of the few entrepreneurial opportunities, especially for teachers leaving the system, where you will make back your money and profit in the first year. So, I mean, in retrospect, depending on how many kids you have and you're charging, I would say what I would call a quasi private school tuition, because it's hybrid. And hybrid goes and touches on what your parents are, some of the parents have issues with how many kids. One of the 4 days that I teach is our co-op day. So that's actually rolled into like membership fees. So I only do instruction Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Wednesday, 50 plus kids come together for co-op. Like what we had at our first co-op, it depends on what we're teaching, but for the first co-op and then the next two, our average probably was about 56 kids. And it's all different ages, from like 4 to 18. So if they're worried about socialization, I would say if you could integrate some sort of co-op into your homeschooling environment, that would be the bingo. The actual instruction, I feel, is more beneficial when it's in a smaller group. That's what I was trying to say. I really feel strongly, and John Taylor Gatto, another wonderful author, would probably agree with me in that once you get past a certain amount of like teacher to student ratio, it turns into the institution we were running away from. So if we really want to hone in on that private education and being able to help the struggling reader or inspire the kiddo that needs a challenge, it's not going to happen in a giant group. So I would say to those parents that, you can even tell them, I told my parents, I'm only comfortable teaching a 10 to 1. Past that, I need to hire a teacher. And so my friend Lisette comes, because we actually have, including my kids now, there was an outpouring. Like I had 6 children lined up for this school. And as of yesterday, with the teens, I think we're sitting at 14. And three of them are what I would call hybrid, where they only come Mondays and Thursdays, and they don't do the Tuesday. And so I've been sending home the work with them. They just couldn't. It's a financial thing. It's a schedule obligation, and they couldn't do it, but they wanted to participate in the rest of it. So you have to be able to bend too. Like you can have a set thing, and then you get an outpour of, no, I like this. Can you accommodate this within reason? So I think that, yes, if you can financially front a building and you have the ability to do it on your property, it's cool because it keeps it out of your personal space. If that's what I wanted, if you are comfortable with having the kids in your personal space in your home, then you don't have the overhead. You can just do it in your house. And, I think it creates a very cozy atmosphere. But you will make, with a 10 kid cap, you will profit after you pay yourself back. So I think that's a huge selling point for teachers who want to leave the system or don't want to teach in the system. Yeah, that they can actually have an income and, teach their own kids while they're still doing what they love. I think I answered all your questions.
No, that sounds
maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. And what is one thing, as we wrap up, what's one thing that you would say to the aspiring mompreneur, someone who is, thinking about making money? Because a lot of our viewers, they want to know, the number one thing they want to know is, how do I make money from home? So what would you say to that mom who's trying to do it all? She's thinking about it and she wants to contribute and all the things, but she also still wants to be present as a mom. What would you say to her? Okay,
so my first piece of advice, and this is just from trial and error, because I tend to be the person that is a yes person and bites off more than I can, chew, is that your biggest job is to be a mom first. The most important job is to be that part of your family that they need, because if that starts crumbling, then everything around it becomes messy. I mean, it's the truth. If I'm not tending to my kids' needs, my husband and I's relationship, and just the family, however you manage your household, if that starts dissolving, then you can't manage anything outside of it. So as much as moms want to become mompreneurs, which is a wonderful thing, that's the first thing they need to check off on their box is, am I managing my role, my job, and my kids' needs being met? Are my needs being met? Am I taking care of myself? And, am I able to foster I'm big on dinners, sit down dinners. And when we get away from that, I do notice changes in my children. So what are the things that are important to you in your household? And then once that box checked off, then you can gravitate towards the other thing. I would say after that's checked off, what are you good at? And it might not be what you think. I am a journalist. I love to write. I never got into the world of like media, interviews, podcasting, other than just I'm talking face to face with the person and taking notes until this last year. I social media scares me. Technology is daunting. And so I kind of just pulled away from that. But there was this constant pulling for me to do more. And so if you're feeling that way, that might be something God's telling you to do. So what are you good at? Are you good at, photography? I have a friend that just teaches photography classes to homeschoolers or parents that want them. Are you really good at art? Open up an art class. Open up a monthly art class, teach every week and charge money for that if that's what you want to do. So see what you're good at and then follow that and add it into your lifestyle. I think it was my son actually that told me, Mom, the most successful people in the world make money doing what's closest to them. So, if you, and what he meant is, if I'm really good at candle making, but I have an accounting job, if I can figure out how to make that candle making business, especially in the world of marketing and social media, as lucrative as my accounting job, I'm going to be more successful in the candle business because it's what I want to do. So, and in a way, he was right. If you're spending every moment of your day teaching your kids, and you are a teacher yourself, why are you not teaching others, even if it's a few others? Because then it just doesn't make any sense. You're selling yourself short. So that would be the second piece of advice. And then the third piece of advice would be to make sure that you don't quit. So I have this big, I'm tired. I bet you are tired. You're managing a million things. And so many times we're just like, I'm done. Like, this isn't working. You're going to get setbacks. They might be accompanied by tears or whatever in your closet. I don't know. But things aren't always going to be perfect, but you can't quit. What you need to do is you just need to take a rest. Even if it's like, hey, I'm shutting down for a week because I have to close the walls and like reset me, my mental states, reset my plan. That's okay because you're just gonna keep moving forward. You're gonna keep moving up. If you shut it down completely, then you got to backtrack. An example of this is that I have Free Range Families podcast, but I was involved with a partner, and my partner moved to Idaho. It was very spontaneous. I wasn't prepared for this. I didn't know. It shocked me, and I'm still kind of recuperating from it because I was like, what? Wait, we have an intro, like all of these things planned. And the momentum's so good. What am I going to do? So instead of quitting, I re-recorded my intro. I just haven't put it out there because I've been so busy, but I didn't stop. I have, people lined up for the podcast, and eventually it's just a pause button. I will get to it. Eventually it will be there and it'll be powerful. You just don't want to stop, I think. So those would be my 3 pieces of advice. Make sure you're wrapping up your family. That's solid. Everything is good there. Then figure out what you're passionate about and what you're really good at and do something that correlates with that. But always listen to that gut feeling too. If God's calling you to do something else, then do that. And then, make sure that you are resting and not quitting. Yeah. So
I love it. That is perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
Valuable, seriously.
Good.
Thank you.
Not a problem.
For sharing and for being on our show today. And thanks everyone for listening and hanging out with us today on Mompreneurs Making Moves. And if you found a little encouragement, a fresh idea, or just felt seen, we'd love for you to subscribe, share, connect, and remember that every small step you take in your business and your life matters, and you're absolutely not alone on this journey. So
Nope.
keep showing up. As Britt said, keep going, keep making moves, and don't forget to take care of yourself too.
Yeah.
And make sure to follow us again at Mompreneurs Making Moves on Instagram and Facebook. And you can watch the full interview on our YouTube channel at Mompreneurs Making Moves Official.
So
And Britt, I know we're definitely going to have you on again
Oh, and
next time, another time.
I'm calling you, okay? So when I get ready, you got to come on my show. We can swap.
Oh yes, absolutely. I'm there.
Okay.
Consider it done.
Perfect.
That would be such an honor.
It's a deal.
And again, for those of you who want to connect with Britt, I'm going to leave her links below the episode. So definitely reach out, connect, follow. You're not going to want to miss what she's doing. She's making some big moves.
Yeah,
So
it's crazy.
we'll see you next time on Mompreneurs
Thank
Making
you.
Moves.
Thank you.